Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We've got a really exciting session here, and we're at the 37th Annual AUHF Conference. We're in Kigali, and this is a hybrid conference, so some of the sessions have been offered in person, and there's been really vibrant discussion in the auditorium. And then some of the sessions have been virtual, and this coming one is a virtual one. I would welcome all of the guests that are dialing in from around the world, that are streaming from around the world, to please put your questions into the chat, and we'll monitor them and see if we can weave them into the discussion. I think we can welcome the panel up, and the title of this session: New Priorities, Mainstreaming Climate Resilience and Green in Support of Affordable Housing. I'm delighted that Sita is joining us, Sita Shah from FSD Kenya, to moderate the session. So I'm going to leave it to you, Sita, to introduce everybody else. And thank you, all of you, for coming. Thank you so much to IFC Edge for your support and for sponsoring the conference. It's made a really big difference to our ability to have this discussion and to share these things. I'm so pleased that I'm going to be joining as in part of the audience. And so I look forward to hearing the discussion as it proceeds. Over to you, Bo.
Thank you so much, Cassia, and welcome everybody. I'm really grateful to be able to join from Kenya. And we have 4 esteemed panelists in a very short period. Each of them could give us insights for the whole duration of the 45 minutes. So we are going to be very mindful of time. I will actually just ask each of the panelists to indulge in why they are speaking on the panel of mainstreaming green priorities. Dennis, perhaps we could start with you, and then Emmanuel, Atta, and Olivia, please.
Okay. Thank you, Sita. I'm happy to be here today. I'm also joining from Nairobi. And I work for the IFC. I lead the Edge Green Building Program. I cover Ghana, Nigeria, and then Kenya, which are some of our priority countries. And our work, it's actually working together with the various stakeholders within the built environment, like the financial institutions, the residential developers or commercial developers, governments, and then also, the developers themselves, to kind of get them to mainstream green buildings in their work. So what can we do in terms of incentives and all that? And it's been interesting. We've seen a lot of interest. We've seen a lot of synergies in working together. And more so, we are seeing affordable housing to be an area that green is very, very important, and green is even possible to do within affordable housing. And that's one of the areas the IFC and the EDGE program is trying to push. I wouldn't want to talk a lot, maybe have more questions, so I'll just allow Emmanuel to also introduce himself.
Thanks for the invitation to join this panel. Appreciate it. I'm one of the founders and the Chief Sustainability Officer of Echostone Housing Systems. We formed this company in order to address the global shortage of affordable housing. And we do this by enabling contractors and developers with technology and construction systems in order to expedite the construction, reduce the cost, build green and sustainably. And we've done this so far we're a relatively young company. We've done this so far in Panama, Nigeria, and we're commencing in Ghana. The system that we use it's an advanced form of concrete called cellular lightweight concrete. And we use some forms manufactured in Germany that allow us to build in a very rapid and sustainable way. Reduction of carbon footprint, reduction of materials, reduction of labor, although we do train local staff to construct all all our projects. That's a short story. I'm happy to share more, but I'll yield to the floor to my colleagues.
Hi, my name is Etta Madete, and I'm really honored to be in this panel. I'm an architectural designer at BuildX Studio, a design-build firm based here in Nairobi. I also teach at the University of Nairobi, and I'm also an edge expert. In my capacity at BuildX, I manage a project which is currently an affordable housing project, and it is one which we're trying to get through the edge platform and trying to sort of tackle affordability and sustainability together here with Dennis. Alongside that, we at BuildX believe that we need to create buildings that are net zero carbon, equitably designed, and enhance quality of life and well-being across all our projects. And affordable housing, which is right there at the bottom of the pyramid, is a key driver of this sector change. I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Hi, I'm Olivia Nielsen. I work at a company called Miyamoto International. We're a global structural engineering firm with a focus on disaster risk reduction. And I'm also an edge expert, and I've been in the affordable housing sector for over a decade, and I've worked in many African countries. And one of the topics that I was going to address today was the intersection between sustainability and resilience. And as COP26 is underway right now, you know, there's this strong intersection between climate change, sustainability, but also making buildings more resilient to all the shocks that we will have to face in the coming decades. So I will add that resilience angle to some of our discussions today. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, everyone. And just to introduce myself, I'm Sita Shah, Senior Affordable Housing Specialist at FSD Kenya, and really learning, you know, the different green challenges for the different sub-markets of housing, and really aware that when we create a very global tool that looks at all areas of real estate, housing is one of them, the localized context is one of them, and affordable housing is a different context. So really, really fortunate to be engaging with developers, and through the open access platform that we're promoting together with our partners, particularly RIAL, Center for Affordable Housing Finance and International Housing Solutions. We're getting very raw data and accurate data on what delivery costs are, who occupies the housing, etc. And we can use that data to drive policy and iterative risk-taking. So I think we will request Olivia, she has a few slides to share, building on what she just mentioned. Olivia, please just jump in.
Sounds good. So let me figure out how to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes. Can you see it? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to run through things a bit quickly. I think we all know about the importance of green buildings. But one thing I really wanted to stress upon is that 1/3 of energy consumed by a building is already met by the time the building is built. And so this is very, very important, because we often talk about, you know, the energy consumed during the life cycle of the building, the water consumed. But let's just remember that by the time the building is built and the occupants are ready to occupy it, 1/3 of the energy is already consumed. So the construction of a building is highly energy intensive. And so with this in mind, it is so important that any new building that is built to last for decades, for generations to come. We just cannot afford to build buildings that will be destroyed in our lifetimes or in our children's lifetimes. And I work for a disaster risk reduction firm, and we focus a lot on these disasters that cause, you know, mass destructions of buildings, demolitions, and rebuilding. And the carbon footprint of the destruction, the demolition, and the rebuilding is huge. It's been calculated after disasters. I won't get into the details, but it is staggering. So if you think about it, you know, just removing a building, removing the debris, and rebuilding it has a huge environmental footprint. And, you know, even though Africa faces maybe fewer disasters than Asia, there are still a number of disasters in the country, including earthquakes, cyclones, and landslides. And we really must take these into account when we build our new homes. And what we try to stress is that resilience needs to be established early on. And I have seen countless number of homes that have just been built, you know, they're brand new, and then a disaster happens and they get destroyed and everything has to be demolished and you have to start over. It's a huge waste of financial resources, but it's also a huge waste of environmental resources. And people ask me, okay, but what is the cost of resilience? How can we make something resilient? If done at the beginning, it can be less than 2% of the costs of a home. Resilience is not expensive, and it needs to be embedded within the initial design of the home, because doing it later on is much more difficult. But disasters aren't the only destroyers. The number of times I go to African countries and I see empty homes, brand new constructions that are empty. This is in Gabon. This is about 3,000 units that were built by the government and are completely empty. Again, the financial and environmental costs of this are staggering. Poorly planned units are often abandoned or mismanaged too. I love this. This is an example from Turkey, where the developer built mini castles. It turns out that people don't want to live in mini castles. Again, a huge waste of resources. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, you know, the cycles of public housing that we have gone through in the United States. But in the 1950s, the US built tens of thousands of public housing units. And 2 decades later, these units had to be demolished. Not because they were poorly built, but because they were built in poor locations and they led to the formation of ghettos. So the construction and the resilience of the construction isn't the only thing, but the location and the planning and the integration of affordable housing into our communities is so important, because otherwise you could be building hundreds of thousands of units today and demolishing them in 20 years. And again, if you build 20,000 green units that need to be demolished in a decade, there's no point. It's a huge waste. So we need also to not only think about the construction of new units, because most of the units that exist today will also exist in a few decades to come. We need to think about maintaining and upgrading existing buildings. And that is really critical. And I'm really glad that EDGE has a retrofit element to it now, that enables people to retrofit their buildings green. And this is something that I think is really lacking in Africa. Whenever I see the news about housing programs in Africa, it's always construction of new units. We're going to deliver 1 million units. We're going to deliver 100,000 units, and so forth and so on. And that's great. We do need new units in Africa, but we also need to pay attention to existing housing units and make sure that they are maintained over time, because we can't keep up. We cannot continue to just build new units. We need to maintain the existing housing stock too. And I'm sure you've all seen the news from a few days ago in Nigeria. Even brand new buildings can collapse for no reason at all, no disaster. And this is just poor building construction. We know how to overcome these. And you know, it's just extremely sad in terms of lives lost and financial and environmental resources that are just completely wasted in the process. So we just really need to keep in mind that we have an existing housing stock and we need to continue to spend our resources on it. We need to retrofit it green. We need to retrofit it against climate shocks. And we need to just simply maintain it against the tests of time. Often it is said, oh, but it's too expensive to do so. You know, retrofits are too expensive. You know, EDGE is helping to bring solutions to make it easier and cheaper to retrofit green. And what our company is doing too is we're trying to go around the world and find innovative solutions to make buildings more resilient for much, much cheaper. And this is important because traditionally to retrofit a building to make it more resilient can cost up to $4,000 per housing unit. which is much, much too expensive for the majority of households. So instead, we're going to different countries, and we found ways to reduce it to $50 to $100, $150, something much, much more manageable. So that's really the end. And so I just want to bring to your attention that, yes, sustainability is key, but without resilience, you won't achieve anything. Resilience and sustainability go together. We must make sure that our buildings that exist today are green or retrofit, will last forever, and that the new buildings that we are built are also, will endure the tests of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And, we understood what you're trying to say. You've explained it very clearly, that we need to be careful about what we build. And because, for all the reasons you've stated, I would like to encourage you, with whichever partners you deliver in the continent, for them to engage with the open access platform, because we need to find the realities of the data of, where these solutions are working, what were the prerequisites, etc. And so more and more people adopt them. I'd really like to invite Emmanuel now to talk a bit about Echostone's projects and maybe contrast the delivery challenges in Panama with West Africa. Does Africa present different challenges in any of the value chain sectors? Please do jump in, Emmanuel.
I'm happy to address that. And building on from what Olivia just mentioned, our technology enables us to reduce our embodied carbon footprint by about 40% just by the materials we use and the process we use, to, at the same time, increasing the life expectancy of the structure up to 100 years. And we do this at a cost reduction of the vicinity of 10 to 20%, depending on the design of the structure. So there are solutions out there which we are proud to offer developers and contractors in our various markets. I have some slides, but I think I'll just, for the sake of time, will speak to the questions you just asked. Our first project, we're a relatively young company, as I mentioned. We've been in existence about 4 years. And our first project was in Panama, which we, in order to prove our concept, served as developers and contractors, as well as the sellers, agents for selling the properties. We built two-bedroom units, approximately 58 square meters. The core structure is cellular lightweight concrete. And the housing in that market sells for somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 for a two-bedroom unit. It's subsidized partially by the government. And we were able to construct that home for about $35,000. Nigeria, in contrast, the construction costs were about $280 a square meter, 64 square meter homes. This is completely finished with tiles and roofs and all the fittings that are compliant with EDGE. I should add that 2 of our 3 projects have been certified as EDGE Advanced, and we have a very close working relationship with Dennis and the ICH people. In fact, we are one of their champions. I'm an EDGE expert as well. So that's Nigeria, the first EDGE Advanced housing project in Nigeria, and I think we were the 3rd in all of Africa. Our business has pivoted a bit in order to increase our potential impact on the affordable housing market. So now we are a technology solutions provider, which enables local contractors to use our technology, multiple contractors in the various markets that we've entered. And so now we focus on the shell, the concrete shell. And our first project in Ghana has been, model homes have been completed as of a couple of weeks ago. And there, our technology results in a cost reduction, not only financial reduction, but time saving, substantial time saving. Time is money. We also have improved the quality of construction. So addressing again Olivia's point in terms of the resiliency of our structures compared to traditional block construction, which is most often applied in Ghana. Our finishes are smooth, so we reduce materials like plastering is not required. We can just use a heavy paint on the surface. Insulation, our cellular lightweight concrete has insulative properties built into it, so we don't need to add expensive insulation materials or the labor to install it. So all these things, it's an overview. I hope, Sita, that gives you some kind of idea of what EchoStone is up to and how we apply this technology and the benefits of it in various markets.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. And I really do appreciate that you've given us figures, delivery figures. We understand the variables that lead to it, but just being bold enough to say in this location, this is what we delivered. It just brings more developers to an understanding. And I have a follow-on question, actually. Do you get any tax incentives in West Africa to help you deliver this technology?
Not that I'm aware of. In Nigeria, there is an incentive to import new technologies, but it's a long, laborious process with a lot of documentation required. And I think we started that about 3 years ago, and I'm not sure we've reached an end to it. No, we are largely market driven and don't depend on direct subsidies, although in Panama, as I said, the government does give the potential buyer up to about 10 to 20% reduction in the cost of the home.
So just to segue on that, because I know in the Kenyan program, there are incentives in the regulatory structure, but as you said, they aren't always easy to obtain. And we do hope, working with players and really bringing the public and private sector together to enable it, because the net impact of giving supply side incentives, which then meet demand affordability easily, is it's not a net outflow. It's just you didn't get that tax. But it was those units were not being built to the scale needed, right? Even in Kenya, we're not delivering the hundreds of thousands of units we need. And we really are in close discussions with the State Department to show that the multiplier impact of not charging VAT, which is 16%, can lead to so much more affordability and can help with the offtake. So again, a plug for the Open Access Initiative, because that's the only way we'll get data to say this is what's being delivered across the continent. This is land cost, this is structural cost, this is finance cost, etc. So to all these panelists and even to the audience, please do engage with this tool. I'd really like to bring Dennis in the conversation, with really humility to to acknowledge that there's a tool that's being applied globally, that's being championed by IFC, and it's being applied to push the envelope to green. So do you see any new or different localized opportunities between East Africa and West Africa for housing and furthermore for affordable housing?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of opportunities. Actually, before I go there, Emmanuel, I want to point out that I think for Nigeria, you were able to get some partnership with the Lagos State government. So that gave you some land to be able to build on. So it did help to reduce the cost of, their construction, able to sell at a lower price. So that is very, very key. It's very, very important. And following on to that, that's one of the opportunities that we see in Kenya and then the East Africa region. In Kenya, for instance, we know of the free land for affordable homes. That was a decree that was announced last year. As to if developers are actually getting this free land, it's something that I think we would have to investigate and then see where the challenges are and how we can help to get this done. Because as you mentioned, these are some of the things that help to bring the total or the final cost of these houses to a level that is affordable by the poor or the low-income people. We also see another incentive that we have been seeing in other parts of the world is expedited permitting, right? So for projects that are going to be built green and affordable, is it possible for the state or the government to provide this incentive where the developer can get their permits as quickly as possible so that they can work? I mean, with a lot of these developers, time really is money, and in these places, so just like West Africa and then in East Africa, the length of time that it takes you to get a permit, sometimes it's very, very annoying because you're like, what exactly is being done? What's the procedure? I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracies. So if these permits are given quickly enough, and you put a caveat that you can be able to access these quick permits only when your project has been certified green, and then also is going to be an affordable project, it then brings up some sort of encouragement for developers to target these areas. Another opportunity that we see with the EDGE program, because we are mainly focused on the financial parts of green. That's one of our main focus, because we are able to get all these stakeholders to speak the same language, to understand what exactly green means, so that if I, a developer, certify my project as green and then I take my certificate to the financial institution, the financial institution is able to identify this certificate as meaning that the project is actually green and can be able to provide that sort of support. So we are trying to bridge these two, these stakeholders, so that they can work together. And we are already seeing some sort of green financing coming up, especially in Kenya and then in East Africa. We are seeing a lot of institutions making green certification a condition for their financing, right? And we've had questions from people saying, can affordable housing also be built green? And the EDGE software is proving to people that that is possible. You've heard from Emmanuel, you've seen the project he's done. I'm sure Etta will talk about what they are doing at Builder Studio. And all of these projects, you are able, because of the software, you are able to choose the most cost-effective measures that can help you to go green. The developer is able to look at the measures that he can afford in order to go green. He doesn't need to concern himself with measures that in quotes would be seen as luxury in projects, right? And then still be able to go green. So that is one opportunity that the IFCH program also does bring about. And in Kenya, surprisingly, we've seen a lot of EDGE experts. ETA is one of the EDGE experts around. We have as many as 55 EDGE experts. Per my last counts, 55 EDGE experts in Kenya. And these are technical people, professionals that are helping developers to really understand how they can choose these measures in their project, how they can make sure that their projects are as affordable as possible. And we are still doing a lot of awareness. We are doing a lot of trainings, and we are very sure that by the next time you ask me how many EDGE experts we have, I may give you a higher answer, because in Kenya, and a lot of this is also due to the work that the GBC is doing. I think Kenya has a very motivated Green Building Council, and they are working really, really, really hard when it comes to green building awareness. And it's been great working with them, because we've tried working with a lot of other GBCs across the continent, and I'll say Kenya's GBC has been, it's been a very different story. Yeah, so that's also one opportunity, and that's we see in this market. All right.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. So Etta, it seems like you could give us some live data and insights from the Zima Homes BuildX project.
Yes, let me share my screen. And as I do so, okay. As I do so, let me know once you could see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I think it's actually quite it's interesting to hear all this different perspectives from across Africa. And for me, what I'd want to share is sort of my direct experience trying to make affordable housing sustainable. Our project, which is financed partially by Real, as well as in collaboration with Edge in terms of the sustainable design tool we're using, is 143 units on half an acre. So it's quite a dense project. And it's trying to house about 34 studio units, 69 one-bedrooms, and 42 bedrooms. So it's quite a dense development, and it's a pilot that we hope to be able to replicate across 10,000 homes. And in this, we have worked extensively with the Edge tool, and we've found that in a nutshell, the tool has enabled us to understand the cost of going green and making us be able to choose one or the other. And you can see in this example where we aimed to get Edge advanced, but we realized during the calculations that this would mean that we need to add a few more elements, as Dennis mentioned it, that maybe we can't afford right now, the capital cost. One example is solar hot water or solar PV, which in high level terms is not just the actual panel that goes on the roof, but the entire sort of piping system that needs to connect, and the water tank, extra water tank required, as well as, for example, a green wastewater treatment system. In this scenario for our project, it would cost an extra around $3,300 per unit. That's just an average across all the 143 units, which in retrospect, not in retrospect, in reality, what the Edge app has enabled us to see is that if we did spend this $3,300 per unit, we'll get the users of the space, the tenants will get a utility bill cost reduction of around $9 per unit, a total of about $1,360 per month for the entire development, which in the long run, if you calculate this monthly cost, is a worthwhile endeavor. And despite the fact that it's causing an 11 to 22% increase in the cost for each of these units at the capital cost stage, in the long run, if you're talking about affordable housing, it's not just about affordable housing when you buy it initially, it's affordable housing development in the long run and being able to improve lives of people in the low income bracket. So this is just an overview, and as you can see, the parameters are quite distinct. So what we've realized is that within Edge and within sustainable design generally, there's low-hanging fruits by, for example, choosing the right kind of materials, having low-flow faucets, dual flush toilets, all these elements, including natural ventilation, insulation, lighting controls. At the moment, if you go into the hardware store, when you're comparing a normal flow and a low flow faucets, in many cases you can negotiate to get them almost at the same cost because the industry has really developed. By having that information, you don't end up defaulting to fixtures which you're used to, and it gives you, as Edge gives you that sort of initiative to think a bit further, think a bit greener. Some cost consideration, as I mentioned, is solar hot water, solar PV. These have high capital cost, which is bringing the cost of the unit up, which is also affecting affordability. But we're able to look at the tool and say, okay, can we leverage the tool and explain this to be able to get additional green funding for a particular line item? And that's what we're working with, different grants and different green bonds to be able to leverage. For example, can you sponsor solar hot water, this portion, and this is the impact and the beneficiaries who benefit from it. And that's what is the benefit of this. Beyond that, you can see that we're able to look through the different aspects of it to see what can we afford now and what can we afford, for example, in our next development, which aims to have more units in a larger development. And we can leverage having maybe one wastewater treatment system that is covering 1,000 units, and then the cost benefits don't end up having a direct impact on affordability. But all that's just to say that the sort of iterative process we've been having with EDGE, IFC, and REAL as well, who are really trying to advocate for sustainable, affordable housing, is that there's key benefits. It's a design tool. It's quite contextual, meaning that it has an ability to locate Kenya. It also has an ability within the housing selection to select low-income housing, which affects the baselines. And it's also very accessible. Very many people in my team, even if you're not EDGE experts, can access the tool and be able to interact with it during the design process, and also calculates the payback in years and in cost to be able to give you a good business case. There's another area, as I said, that we always need to look at how we can improve and what are the gaps that the industry can begin to fill, which is sort of ensuring that it's not being used as a tick box, which EDGE is also working quite closely with the auditors to ensure that people understand what green actually means. Beyond that is looking at embodied carbon versus embodied energy. So embodied carbon, as Olivia mentioned, embodied carbon is the entire life cycle cost of a building product, from its manufacture, its transport, its entire process, whereas embodied energy is operational energy. And in the green building scenarios, you're getting really good at fixing operational energy, but the biggest thing we need to start tackling is embodied carbon and how we can really tackle that. And that's another gap that we see that we need to really address, especially in the affordable housing sector. And then, of course, beyond that, it's health and well-being. How do you tackle ensuring, and I'll stop sharing, but how do you tackle ensuring that we're not just saying that this part is green? I mean, affordable housing has so many more beneficiaries and there are different aspects that are involved, including ensuring that they're, for example, when you look at the transport network, where have you placed the building so that they're not using they're able to access public transport? How are you calculating and quantifying the baseline for shower use and water consumption in reality when it comes to the affordable housing sector? And beyond that, the capital costs at the moment, I know I shared this, they become prohibitive when it comes to very high green features, but if you look at the beneficiaries and the sort of compounded effect of the number of people within affordable housing, then it becomes a no-brainer. So for me, I think I wouldn't sort of delve into sort of like the more recommendations, but I believe that EDGE and the IFC tool, they're getting there in terms of figuring out how it can align with affordable housing. But that's sort of like we can begin to take the next steps to ensure that it can accommodate incremental phasing of the project. For example, can Zima homes be designed to be solar hot water ready, and then in 30 years be able to sort of accommodate solar hot water heating, even if maybe it's not a reality right now? Beyond that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Etta, this is just so wonderful. And I think we're really privileged Dennis is here and is always a phone call away. I've actually just returned from Mukuru this morning, which is one of the informal settlements. When you look at the reality, you know, it's where Mukuru is right now, with so much good assistance from the county. There's a special planning area. We talked about this in the UN Climate Week, where we had the SDI chairman talk about it. But it was still heartbreaking. The 12 rooms that shared the upgrade, and the upgrade is one toilet, and you also bathe in that toilet. So we really have such a scale to think about. And that's why we all acknowledge on this that you have to start somewhere. You know, EDGE really started, and it's a tool for all real estate. It's a tool for hotels. It's a tool for offices, you know, in North America. So how do we work together? And we're so privileged. We're all here, and we have such a level of trust. And it makes me think, I was speaking to someone who works very much in accounting in the nonprofit sector. And she talked about how IFRS was created as a global tool for transparency in accounting. And do we now need to think about the EDGE Green tool being really, modified for very affordable housing, and to bring that into our planning and our design and our zones? So is it possible to say, if the occupiers are not even going to have cars, and they're not going to have parking for cars built, I mean, that in itself is such a huge green win, and really bring all that into account. Another, like just this morning, I was with an engineer for Nairobi Water and discussing waste treatment plants and how, the need for them. And he educated me that the waste treatment plants that the exhaust trucks take away, a lot of buildings in Nairobi, affordable housing all along the spinal roads of Nairobi, which is rental housing, several steps above informal settlement, it's formal housing. They build kind of a septic tank, and then when it gets full, they call an exhauster. You're not allowed to call an exhauster if you don't have a permit. So they're permitted by the government, and they go dump it in a certain place, they pay for the dumping, and by the final chamber of the treatment plant, I've been told I need to go visit, there's fish life, marine life, there are hippos, it's clean enough to drink, and whatever doesn't go back into drinking actually goes into the river flow. So it is used downstream. So I think I just wanted to say that we have a few minutes if anyone has any ideas, agrees with it, because in a formal development sector, you can really start and think about, and you need to insist, like you need to be sure the taps used, etc., are of the level wanted, but that means they're made in a higher end facility that can give the kind of, manufacturer information needed, right? It's not made locally by a small manufacturer, even though you can stand and open both the taps and say these are both low flow, but the one from the smaller manufacturer will not have the certification necessary to meet global standards. And I think why it's so critical is we need to make sure that when the finance world, and I have to say that, my training, unfortunately, I used to say I'm not a technical person till I realized finance is technical. But, having been through really hardcore finance from business school, etc., I feel the finance kind of is a herd, and the herd is green affordable housing. And we need to protect that. We need to make sure the narrative is green affordable housing. And so we're not, cutting out developers who are even lower down market, who can't get specific things. And what is so promising is we're all here talking to each other, engaging with each other to make that happen. So any closing thoughts on that?
Yeah, Sita, I'd like to address some of the points that you and Etta have raised. The prices that I quoted earlier included infrastructure costs, included wastewater treatment and potable water, as well as roads and play structures. But getting back to Etta's point about design and edge and affordability, I have an interesting case study. In Panama, when we first went into the market, we adopted a house design that was pre-permitted. And I think if you all looked at it, you would agree that it was not the most efficient design. And yet we got it certified under EDGE for less than 1% above traditional cost. But what the EDGE tool allowed us to do, in fact, encouraged us to do, is look at the design to increase its energy efficiency. So from the inefficient design, we achieved something on the order of 30% energy reduction. By modifying the architectural plan, we've actually increased the energy efficiency to over 50% and reduced the size of the unit by about 6 square meters, making it less expensive to construct, more energy efficient, reaching EDGE advanced. So design is critically important. And we have discussions with developers and architects every day about their designs and the efficiency of them. Every corner costs you money, every little decoration costs you money. And if our goal is to provide basic sustainable housing, then we need to look at the basic designs. And I think architects play a major, major role in this. So I hope that adds to this. And so EDGE can actually reduce costs. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
And I think I'll just add, Sita, or just my closing remark is that affordable housing is only viable when it's able to scale. So if we're not able to scale something and make a sustainable scaling, so like I believe that point you made, which is that we need to do green affordable housing, it's more affordable housing that is green and that is able to scale. And that's sort of, I feel, the best way to mainstream green is sort of to make sure we can leverage green features across multiple beneficiaries, and also ensure that we're prioritizing the right baselines for affordable housing, not the common baselines. That's all from me.
Yeah, and then on my side, so what I want to point out is, I mean, with Edge, we've been growing. When Edge started, it was only for new buildings, and it was just for homes. Later, we added on. Now, I mean, Edge can do any type of project at all. It was very interesting. Sometime this year, we certified an airport. So we certified a sports stadium in Argentina. Right. So it's grown to do a whole lot of things. And as Olivia mentioned, we are now looking at including retrofits. So although Edge can now do existing building, we are looking at creating a session within the Edge app that does retrofit. And this becomes very important. It helps us answer Eta's question on what if we build and then say, okay, we make a solar hot water ready, right? So with the retrofit, it's now possible for existing buildings that do not meet the green standard to now take a look and then say, okay, what changes can I make? What additions can I make to my project to get it to this level that I want it to be, right? So that's going to be possible. And with regards to the materials, being able to meet the certification standard, I also think that it's necessary for us to start enforcing some of these standards, right? Because we shouldn't say that because it's going to be affordable housing, anything at all should be used. I mean, we should be very, very selective of what materials we are going to be using for even affordable housing. But yes, of course, we need to look at affordability aspects. It shouldn't be way over the cost. I mean, very expensive. And in the market, we are seeing that it's possible to get some of these materials at lower costs, lower rates. So that's something that we need to look at. Maybe we have to do a lot more awareness on the available material options that developers can have access to do their projects. Emmanuel from Ecostone, I mean, they are pushing a particular type of building technology. Is it possible for other housing developers to have a look at it? Is it something that can work for them, right? So these are some of the things that I think we need to be talking about so that we can have some sort of agreement on how we can go forward when it comes to affordable housing. Right.
Thank you all. This has been excellent. Thank you. And we'll just mention FSD sponsoring a green materials directory with KGBS. So we hope we will have some affordable options on it.
Thank you, Sita, and thank you everybody for such an engaging, interesting discussion, and one that we will certainly be able to carry on long into the future. There are so many different strands within your conversation that would be usefully carried forward. So we'll think about how we create a forum to be able to do that. But thanks so much for your time and for your engagement.
Thank you.
Okay. All the best.